Hey everyone, welcome to Line of Work with Mario Lentsch, and today's guest is Bill with H&A Striping. How are you doing today, Bill?
Doing all right, Mario. How about yourself?
Doing very good. Another day above ground, so I can't complain. And we do parking lot striping, so
Yes,
that's a great
sir.
thing.
Yes, sir. Every day is a great day. Even the bad ones, man. I always try to remind myself of that because I'm alive, and
That's
that
right.
in itself is a blessing.
I like to think of like those bad days are like great learning lesson days. Like there's always something to learn about. Like when your striping machine just goes kaput on you for the most random things, and you're just now on the job site trying to figure out how to do it, but then you come out of it and you're like, well, now I have a new skill, right? I know how to
Yeah, and
troubleshoot this now.
it's not even like necessarily equipment breaking down. It could be something stupid like a paint spill, or you have
Yeah.
another piece of equipment break, and it's just yeah. I always try to, no matter what's going on in a horrible situation that makes me angry or makes me sad or whatever, right? I always try to see the good in it, because I honestly believe that if you look at it from the right angle, there's something good out of every bad situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like to play the game sometimes because, this past weekend, I was doing 12 pickleball courts striping for middle school. And I was getting to the point where I was wrapping up and just, I was using the Graco 3900 to do it. And I, I missed my start and stop point twice and I had to go back and clean it all up. And
Yeah.
I was just like, man, it's been so long since I've made one of these like little mistakes. But then I was just thinking about it and just like, well, you never know. The powers that be could probably like trying to defer on when I finish this because I could be avoiding like a car accident or something like that on the way home. Had I just
Oh,
finished,
yeah.
30 minutes earlier or whatever. Like you just never know those things. And so that's kind of like
Man,
the way I like
I've
to
had
play
that
that
happen
game.
so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen that happen so many times. Like, dude, if we'd have left or gotten here any sooner or later, it's like that could have been bad. Like, so it's a good thing that that
Yeah.
everything worked out the way that it did. So yeah, it's truly incredible when and I'm sure that happens to everybody in the industry, and
Oh,
even not
yeah.
even necessarily industry, just life in general, man. It's incredible, the timing of how things happen.
Absolutely. Speaking of timing, though, I kind of want to go back into because, like, what I'm always curious about is like how people even get into construction, or in this case, parking lot striping. Because one thing, I know you started your own parking lot striping business, and I'm just curious, like, what were you doing before you even started doing parking lot striping?
So, uh, originally, I worked in the hospital. I was doing X-ray and CT. I was an X-ray and CT technologist. I was the one that I would administer the dye for CT scans. I'd take your X-rays if you broke a bone. I'd help out in the ER. I even worked in surgery cases. I got to see when they would put in the implants for the hips and the knees and everything. So that was I actually enjoyed the surgery a lot in that aspect, because it was really fascinating to see how it was actually done. But what got me out of the medical field was, there was several things. One of them being, probably the major one, was COVID,
Mm,
and I give props to the people that stayed during that, because they really are heroes, man. They're putting their lives at risk, above, putting other people's lives at, above their own in a way. I got out because I was kind of at the time scared for my family. I didn't want to bring something home
yeah.
that could possibly kill my family or myself. So that was one thing. The other major contributing factor to it was that I felt underappreciated and overworked.
Mm,
I kind of felt like I went above and beyond for the most part. I was always the one kind of grabbing the exams, being proactive, and everybody else just kind of like to sit around and play the who's going to grab it next game.
yeah.
And I felt like I was kind of held to a different standard, because anytime that I needed something, it was like, well, no, we need you to do it. But the other people, they would be a lot more relaxed with. They would always show up late. They'd never get wrote up. And it was just, I got tired of that crap, man. So I got out of it. And for a little while, I was making my living at the casino. I was playing slots. There's, certain slots I would play, and I'd make my money doing that. And me and my brother were, doing it together and come to the conclusion like this may not be around forever. They because they could take those games out at any time, and then where's the money going to come from then? And so we
Yeah.
kind of started doing some research, and he found a video on parking lot striping, and he showed it to me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And it just immediately caught my attention, and I was like, "Hey, that looks pretty easy." Okay. I mean, some aspects of it are pretty
Oh
easy,
yeah.
but there are a lot of challenges that come with it too. So, but that's how we got introduced to it. And luckily we had a pretty good amount of money saved up from the casino, and we put our money together and started our parking lot striping business. So that's how we got into it, was YouTube.
Yeah, that was somewhat similar, but not quite like how I even got into it. Because like before, I was already kind of working in it. I was working for another company like that. But I've heard that a lot though. A lot of people were just coming from like social media, which I find is very interesting because, like I was saying, um, is that there's no trade school for something like this. There's no it's one
Wow.
of those weird things. You either fall into it in the weirdest ways, or you just meet someone that's already kind of doing it, and or you were already just you working it in a capacity. But to go from X-ray to parking lot striping is a very
It's a
interesting
huge shift.
transition. Yeah,
Yeah.
going from outside to inside. I think one of the things that you talked about though that really kind of felt in the same ballpark as me is that like when you're working really hard and you're kind of like really doing the best you can for the position, and you feel like other people around you are not kind of pulling the same weight, or at least you just have it in you to kind of go above and beyond, and you just kind of just can't help it sometimes.
Yeah.
And that but how well though, I think, at least in my experience, how that transfers over to starting your own parking lot striping business or any kind of business really, because now you get to take that same work ethic that you were using in the workforce to now build something for yourself, and you still have that same work ethic. Actually, if anything, you get to turn it up even a higher notch because now you're building something for yourself. Now there's a bigger vision, I think, to kind of go with it.
And it's funny, like doing that, working for myself. I'm I'm my own boss, obviously, and I'm a harder boss than any boss I've ever had because I hold myself. Uh, you know, I beat myself up a lot more than anybody else ever could, as far as you know, like quality of work and everything that's being done. It's like, hey, this looks like crap. Do it better. No, this isn't perfect. Do it better. And sometimes, and where it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because, it helps me to provide a quality product, quality service for my customer. But it's also a curse because, sometimes I do spend a little bit more time than necessary. Well, a lot of times I spend more time than necessary trying to get a job completed, or, one aspect of the job completed. And, obviously that kills your hourly rate. But for me personally, I feel that quality is way more important than trying to just become rich. I don't really believe in the whole uh, just give the customer what they want, take the money and run.
Yeah.
Um, I don't agree with that concept. I don't agree with that mindset. A lot of guys will, that's how they believe. That's what they think. They don't care. And, I'm one of those people like, if I'm a customer and I come to you and I'm expecting you to give me a quality product and quality service and advise me when it comes to this so that I don't make a poor decision that's going to cost me even more money down the road. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And when you're on the flip side of that, tell you what, I'm never going to call you back again, ever. I will go out of my way to try to do it myself if I have to before I even call you back for service. And so, um, it's just that's something that's kind of always drove me nuts with some of the guys in the industry, and I don't agree with that kind of work.
But I think that's the beauty of starting your own business though, because you now get to have a say in that and how you do run a business. And at the end of the day, it's like, as long as I'm in business, then that's great. And, they get to run their business however they see fit. And I think we attract a certain type of customers over time because, I don't know about you, but word of mouth is a very big foundation for me. And part of that is like what you're saying of going above and beyond for that quality of service, for your customers. And I think how important that is, especially when you're just starting. I mean, if you're just starting, having that foundation of good quality work. And at the end of the day, we just learned how to do this. We had to teach ourselves, or we found someone to kind of guide us at
Yep.
least a little bit to give us a little bit better skill set. But to have that innate want and desire to do quality work, though, that can't really be trained. That's something you have and
No.
build upon. And I totally agree with you, though. There's totally times where I've also taken a little too long on certain jobs just because I was trying to do. But then again, like I said, I think it's part of the process of building like what kind of company you're trying to build. Because over time, you're going to
Yep.
have people coming and working for you, and you want to have that strong foundation, and it's going to be built on what you built before them. Because especially when you start training and you have these expectations of like this is how we do things. Another thing that you're talking about is like how like being hard on yourself. I think we've all had those same kind of feelings too, because I've had a lot of times where I've been my harshest critic, and it wasn't until like probably these last probably 6 months where I've been very very forgiving to myself, because at the end of the day it just like it always just kind of keeps working itself out, and all this stress that I'm kind of putting on myself is all really imaginary anyways, at least in my experience. um how are you dealing with this stress and working like from have you noticed a difference between the beginning and where you're at now?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been a huge difference. So, like, in so many different aspects, right? Um, Now when I approach a job, I'm not nowhere near as stressed out as when I first started. Because when I first started, and don't get me wrong, I think there's always still plenty to learn. Even if you've been in an industry for
Hmm.
20 years, I think there's still somewhere that you can, learn and improve. But the knowledge that I have now and the experience that I have now, when I come to a job, even new layout or restripe, I feel way more confident, way more comfortable, a lot less stressed out versus when I first started. When I first started, because I wanted to do a good job, I wanted to have a quality product and not tarnish my name right off the bat. I was I couldn't sleep. I would get poor sleep the night before a job. I, was extremely stressed out and nervous whenever I would get on a job site. Like, oh, am I going to mess this up? Um, and coming talking about that, my very first job is actually from an automotive shop that we've taken our vehicles to. Me and my brother, we built a relationship with them, and then once we started the parking lot striping, they were like, "Oh, hey, why don't you go give us a quote for it?" And it's like, okay. But anyway, it was a really small lot, man. I mean, probably maybe 20 lines, if that. It might have been less. No handicaps, just literally just parking stall lines, not even cross hatches. And our first time doing it, it took us a total of 8 hours. And we
How
had
did
a
you
Titan
how did
8,
you do it?
so we had a Titan 850 at the time. And I remember I was doing all this research before getting our first job, and then I come to find out like, oh, I probably shouldn't have bought that machine because the wheels are really hard, and any little bump it'll move that gun and just mess up your line. So we and then we thought that every line always had to be power washed before that. So I have a little electric power washer. We went out there, we power washed it, spent a bunch of time making sure it was nice and clean, and then let it dry. And then we came back later on that day and we masked off almost every single line, even though because we were using the Titan 850, we wanted to make sure that we were getting nice straight lines, because we wanted our first one to be look great. And so we spent a lot of time masking, we spent a lot of time on the prep work, and then we sprayed it. Luckily, it turned out beautiful, but it took way too much time. And they were very happy with it, and they kept our information. They actually had us restripe it again this year because they're really happy with it. And the funny thing is when we did restripe it this year, we went from taking 8 hours down to, including unloading and loading time, like 30 minutes. It was
Yeah.
a drastic
9 day
change in
difference.
how long
Yeah.
it, yeah. I mean, it was just, and it still came out absolutely great, and they were happy with it. But yeah, and obviously when we approached it at that time, really confident because we had much more experience under our belt. So we were able to get out there, pull everything out, stripe it, and be gone and not have any stresses or worries about it.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think those first jobs are always like the most stressful jobs.
even there's still some jobs now that I'm a little bit stressed out and I get a little bit stressed out and don't sleep too well when I got to go to the next day. But it's typically the more complex ones. It's a little more than just a restripe or a little more than just laying out some 90-degree stalls and a couple handicaps. So one of the ones is like when I got a core drill and install signs. Always
Mm,
obviously got to worry about utility lines being down there, which we could talk about that on a whole different thing, what you need to do beforehand. But there's that. Worried about because I have to have a generator for the core drill if there's not a power source close enough by, because you can't just string together a bunch of extension cords. That's not good.
no.
That's how you create some electrical problems and burn up equipment. uh, and then that's the other thing is like worrying about, is the core drill going to quit on me? Am I going to have to go rent one? And so, those are the things that kind of sit in the back of my mind and that I start stressing about before certain jobs, specifically on that one. This example was core drilling, but it's as with, each job that gets done, it gets a little easier.
Have you done that though? Is that why you say that with the daisy chaining the cords for
No,
the
no, I have
power
not
drill?
because no, I have not. And it's because, anytime I got to do something new or I have very little experience with, I try to do as much research as I can on it.
Yeah.
So with the core drill, because it's such a high dollar piece of equipment, so the whole kit, the core drill, the stand, not including the vacuum, so the stand and everything, it's like a $7,000 or $8,000 piece of equipment, so it's not cheap. I mean, that's basically another striping
Yep.
machine right there. And then the little vacuum to hold it in place, that's like another $1,500, and it's just a little handheld like suction vacuum that connects to the core drill. So and then you got to be able to make sure that you can put water as you're drilling because the amount of heat that it generates. If you don't have access to a water supply, you need to have buckets full of water and try to be
Yeah.
sparingly with it, but also make sure you're keeping it wet enough to be able to get through it. So that's the other thing that, another aspect I got to worry about. But I did a ton of research, found out that it's really not recommended to daisy chain uh, extension cords, and you got to have a certain gauge of extension cord. If you just go get your standard household extension cord, that's not going to be sufficient, and you're going to possibly cause a fire or burn up your equipment or flip a breaker. So you got to
Yep.
have a nice, nice thick, I think it's a 10 gauge extension cord. It's rated, you got to have it rated for 25 or 30 amps, I think. So, knowing the amp rating, knowing how many amps your cord drill is going to pull, there's a lot more to it than what people think and realize. And a lot of these guys are like, oh, just plug it up and go. Well, no, man, that's not smart. You need to have the proper flow for electricity, because if not, you're gonna run into problems, and you could potentially cost yourself a ton of money, not necessarily just in equipment, but if you wherever you're hooking into power. So there was one job we went to that the building's clocked and closed. So if we flick that breaker, we have no way of turning the power back on. But if that breaker, for whatever reason, and I don't know how common this is, but if that breaker for whatever reason did not operate properly, you might have just caused a fire in that building, and
Yep.
you're going to have a lot of fun with that. So be smart, do your research, do it right, or you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think yeah, having the proper equipment in place and also like during the time of like where you're at in your business journey too, I think that's also important. It's one of those things that could be a little trickier if you're just starting out, especially like when you're just taking on all this equipment debt. I know for myself at least, I was very slow growth and still kind of am, just making sure I have just the proper finances to just keep dumping back into the equipment and everything else just to kind of keep it going. But I've heard some other people in our industry, they start and they just get all this stuff but then they don't have a lot of customers in place, and then they kind of just go out of business by accident just because they've just stretched themselves so thin. But like you said, though,
I've almost made that mistake.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
everyone kind of
invested a little
has.
more than I should have. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you're just lucky and you make it through those times. Because I think I've almost done the same thing, and I almost made a certain decision too of getting a rental place. And when I just was looking at the finances of like, what am I really getting out of that and what I'm going to be spending? And it's just more of like, yeah, it's a great deal. A lot of times that's usually what it comes down to is you find a great deal on something like a good piece of equipment that you would want in the future, but you're not actively using it like right now. And
Yep.
that's usually where I think, at least from myself, is where I've seen that trap kind of come into, is like it's just a great deal. So people kind of just take advantage of those good deals. But a lot of times with those deals, you got to pay with cash. There's not really much choices for
Yeah.
financing or anything like that. And in the very beginning phases, I think actually of any phase, but so far from my 2 years of experience is how important cash flow is. Having that cash on hand to just keep uh, your overhead expenses, like having a couple of months of overhead expenses like already always in the bank, and then finances set aside for taxes and
I
everything like
would
that.
I would say at least 6 months because depending on where you're looking at. So obviously in Florida, you guys can pretty much stripe year round. For me in Oklahoma, it gets pretty cold in the winter months. And I mean, there are guys that they say that they stripe in, 10 degree, 0 degree weather with solvent based paint. And it can be done, don't get me wrong, but I always try to do it based on the manufacturer's recommendations of when to stripe the paint as far as the temperature level and everything, because if you don't follow, they have those guidelines set in place for a reason. All right. And it's because that's going to
Yep.
produce the best results and not have like premature failure. I try to explain that to my clients whenever they want us to stripe in the wintertime. If it's a cold day and it's not going to get above, I think it's 40 degrees for solvent. I tell them like, look, I can do it, but there's going to be a risk that the paint's not going to properly adhere and not properly cure, and you could have premature flaking of the paint, and it may not last as long. A lot of these guys I've seen, they don't care. They still do it anyway. I try to refrain from doing that so that way I give them the best quality product possible to where I'm not being called back out sooner than what I have to be. Don't get me wrong, that the monies would be great, but I don't I don't want to do that to my customer. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of them and looking out for them. And a couple of them, they appreciate that. They really do. They appreciate when I'm honest with
Hmm.
them about stuff. When I set the expectations of what to is going to be there when the job's done. Because you get lots that they're severely deteriorated. And I mean, I had a lot that I did that we blew it off as we were blowing it off. Chunks of asphalt were getting blown out, and even after blowing it off and sweeping
Yeah.
everything, striping, it was still the pressure from the gun. It was still blowing out chunks of asphalt, and it's like, this you really need a new lot, man. Just so don't expect a nice, shiny diamond. You're getting a polished turd
Yeah.
here, okay?
I
So
think like the lesson in that though is something I take very seriously as well, is the setting the foundation of like customer expectations of like what you're about to get, of cautioning them. And it's very easy to be like, yeah, well, go ahead, let's do it. And then, because I know in like about 6 months or less, you'll be calling me back to redo it. But a lot of times it's just more of just educating them though on what's the possibilities that could happen by making this decision. So that way they're making a now informed decision. I've had a mixture of like, we'll put a project on hold and we're going to come back to it when the weather conditions or other conditions are a little bit more better for us. Or they're like, we understand, we don't care, we just need it done, so we're just going to do it. But
yeah,
thank you again for your honesty, because I think, like I said, like you said, it's just that having that foundation of just the communication and setting realistic expectations, because we know what we know, but they don't know what we know, and that's why they pay us, right? Is for that expertise. But
yeah,
it's so easy though to take advantage of that ignorance that they might have, just so you can make a bigger buck down the line. But I don't know. I just don't
yeah.
think that's a long term solution. It's easy to because you want that reputation. I think at
And
least in our
you
space,
want them to
it's
come
just
back too.
yeah, you want them to have that good experience that you can set up, and it's just it's such a unique space. So it's like if it there's only so many of us out there doing this stuff, painting parking lots, and it's
Oh,
very easy to lose a customer.
yeah. And where I was going with that, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought for a second. But where I was going with that is because of the winter months, we're not as busy, so we don't get
Mm,
quite as much striping jobs. So during that time when you don't have that money coming in, you need to have a savings to continue to pay that overhead, that monthly insurance cost, because that's always going to be there. Any storage fees, like we keep our stuff at a storage, locked, a secure storage facility, so we got to pay for those units because we have outside units and indoor climate control units for the paint, so we can make sure that the waterborne paint stays fine, as well as stuff that really should be kept out of extreme heat or cold conditions. So you need to try to have something saved up in your business account to continue to pay those bills during those slow months. And even in the, for us, since we got so much competition in our area and we're still pretty new, the business kind of fluctuates. We'll get busy and then it'll
yeah,
kind of drop off, and it'll get busy and it'll kind of drop off. So even though it's the busy time of year, because we're not well established like some of the other guys in the area, um, we we have to account for those times that it drops off, because the bills are going to keep coming in, even though the money is not. So you got to make sure to try to
yeah.
keep something in the account to keep those bills paid. Um, and also, so because of there's a lot of competition in our area, and one of our customers that we picked up last year, he's reused us a couple times, but I remember the first conversation I had with him, he told me, he was like, "Okay, are you going to be here when you say?" Because he asked me to come out and take a look to give him a quote. And he's like, "Are you going to be here when you say you are?" And I said, "Yeah, we'll be there." And he's like, "Are you sure?" Because he goes, "Every year I look up parking lot striping. There's always a new company, and these guys never do what they say they're going to do." And I said, "No, we'll be there. If we say we're going to be there, we're going to be there. We do what we always say. We always try to provide the best service possible for the price and everything." And he was pretty agitated. He kind of had a little bit of a crappy attitude, but it was because he had just got screwed over by somebody that they seal coated the lot, and and they striped it, and there were some other areas of the other property that they were supposed to stripe and paint as well, and they never came back and did it. And he was
I'm
like,
guessing they already got
you
paid.
know, yeah, well, I think they already got paid, but I'm not entirely sure. So you know they just they ghosted them, and it happens a lot in this industry. These guys come in, and not just parking lot striping, but I'm like construction in general. These guys will come in,
Yeah,
take the money, and then they'll never come back and finish the service. And so you know yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy,
no,
man, and it makes it harder.
we,
It makes it a lot harder for the newer guys coming in, because it's like right off the bat, your name is tarnished. You're one of those new guys that's going to come in, take the money, and run. So sometimes, depending on where you're at, it can be a little hard getting started.
absolutely. And I think though part of to combat that is one of the things I've focused extremely hard with my business though is the Google reviews or any type of review of having that set up and just showing a presence, like having a website, having a real email address. It's not required, and I know plenty of parking lot striping companies, even around me, they have no website. They run off of Gmail, but they stay plenty busy just because of who they know. But at
Yeah,
least for me, like if we're gonna do this, like I kind of want to start with the right foot on the ground per se, and it's just like these people are going to be looking for these things, right? They like when they're going to call you or they're vetting you, they're going to like background check at least a little bit. They might not dig too
yep,
deep, but like, do you have a website? Who are you? You know what I mean? I'm about to have you come on my property and potentially hope you don't jack up my parking lot right now because how many memes I've seen on those Facebook groups of the
Oh yeah.
the most like crooked lines ever, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, how'd you even do that? Like,
You
you
got
know
the
how much out of the
free-handed
effort you have
handicap
to
guys.
go? Yeah, like how much of an effort you have to go to like mess up the line on the machine, like like that, like
Oh, and it's
so.
funny too. So even a website, like my brother, he spoke to a customer one time, and my brother was like, "Yeah, you can go to our website and look at our pictures, the work that we've done." And he was like, "Are they really your pictures, or did you just steal them from somebody else and put them on your website?" So just that comment right there, that lets you know how shady a lot of the
Yep,
people are that come into this industry, and the kind of crap that they pull to make a quick buck, man. And it can make it harder, a lot harder for the new guys to even get started out doing it. Um,
absolutely.
our first job was because of, because we already knew the people. That's the only reason why we got the job. Outside of that, we probably would have struggled for a while to still get our first job. So yeah, you'd be amazed at some of the stories I've heard from customers as to what happened with particular companies, and I'm like, man, that's messed up.
What were you say like your first few jobs were like? Like how did you get them, and then what was the process through them, especially like in the beginning, like learning everything? Because you're saying that earlier.
So
What that first job took like what 8 hours?
yeah, yeah, it took 8 hours. So the first job, like I said, me and my brother, we had built a relationship. Kind of became friends with these guys that fixed our vehicles. It's a small automotive repair shop. And we just happened to be talking, and it was like, oh yeah, we started a parking lot striping business, and the owner was like, really? And so yeah, and he's like, well, why don't you give me a quote? It's like, oh, okay. And that was our, I believe, our first quote and our first job. Um, and then after that, I believe because of the experience that we had, we went ahead and bought a used 3900 that we found for a decent price. We were like, yes, screw this little 850. This ain't gonna cut it. So we found a 3900, picked it up, and next job we got, I believe, I'm trying to remember how, I think it was a Google call, and it was from a seal coater. He doesn't really, I guess, didn't really like to do the striping as much. His primary focus was seal coating.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the first job that we did for him, I feel like we messed it up pretty bad. But when I compare the work that was done to what I have actually seen, we didn't do too terrible. Uh, for me, it was still horrendous, but compared to some other stuff I've seen, it really wasn't that bad. Messed it up, and told him, I offered it to him multiple times to go out and fix it, and we never ended up doing so. We'll get to that here in a minute, but then he hired us for a few more jobs, and it was like after that second one, after that mess up, it just went a lot easier after that. I figured out what I was doing wrong, and all the rest of the jobs went beautiful. Then came to the last job that we did for him. It was probably like 4 or 5 jobs later down the road. We sent him the invoice and never heard back. He ghosted us, and he still owes us like $1,300, 11 or $1,300. Never paid us. And because I was still so new, I didn't know what the process was of like putting a lien. And obviously the time has passed.
Yep.
I can't do it anymore. So we took that hit. Um, so that was a failed partnership that kind of put a taint on wanting to be able to work with other people. And then there was another company that we started working with, and we still work with them occasionally, and they gave us quite a few jobs, and that helped get, kind of build up the experience along with a lot of jobs that we got on our own. That really helped with getting experience. But where those jobs started coming in at was I had spent probably about a solid month when we weren't getting any work doing my own research on SEO, taking your advice, taking Chris's advice on the SEO work to build up my Google business profile on my website to get us ranked higher on the
Yep.
search results when somebody searches parking lot striping in my area. And it paid off because then the phone calls started really, I mean, we just started getting blown up at that time, and we got a lot of business. We had steel coated an apartment complex. That was a $34,000 job. and it turned out great, turned out beautiful. They were happy. They sent somebody out from California to do a walkthrough and look at everything, and they were they were pretty impressed because they asked us like, "How long have you guys been doing this?" And it's like, "Well, this is our second year in business." And he was like, "This is your second year?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man, you guys did awesome." I was like, "Well, thank you. That's what
Yeah.
we're aiming for." So, um, and that's not the first time I had that. You know, we've had a couple people that were really surprised, like, "Wait, you guys have only been doing it for this long?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Man, you do awesome work." And I was like, "Good. I'm glad to hear it." But it just Google for us, not word of mouth. We don't really have a whole lot of repeat customers.
Mm.
And we don't really have a whole lot of word of mouth. We've had a few referrals and we've had a few repeats, but most of our business is surprisingly it's all been new clients off of Google. We don't have any contracts with customers or companies or anything like that. It's just it seems like it's always somebody new. It's interesting.
Yeah, the Google gods paying you a visit, blessing you with some more work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, I'm with you in
Yeah.
this. I'm in
I,
the
I
same boat
just
because
I was just gonna say today I did have a repeat customer. I just got a quote approved today. It's a real small, quick, easy job.
that's
They just
awesome.
need one handicap stall stripe, so that'll be a quick in and out. I'm probably gonna go knock it out this evening, but yeah,
It's always an awesome feeling. I love getting those emails saying the project's been approved. That's a great feeling.
yep, yes it is.
especially especially some days you sent out like probably like 3 weeks ago, and you're like, oh, that's probably a goner, and then you
Oh
just get the
man, I
random
had
approved.
I had one that was sent out. I think it was like last year, and then I got a call like it was this year. I got a call about that quote. And they're like, "Hey, we got the approval. We want to move forward." And I was like, "Oh, dang. Let me take a look at it because prices have gone up a little bit. Let me make sure I can still honor that price." And we were able to. So you know what? We still made a good profit off of it. So I was like, "Yeah, I'll still honor it. You know, we're good." Because our quotes we only have them for 30 days, but just because price of steel changes, price of paint
Yeah,
changes. So we don't want to sit there and have a quote that's been out for 2 years and prices have gone up like 30%, and then we're not, we're like kind of breaking even or something. I mean, if you're breaking even at 30%, that you didn't mark it up enough. But
yeah.
anyway, but you get my point.
Thank you for your charity work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
So,
yeah, it's yeah. I think the first few jobs are just like always those very interesting experiences because there's so much to learn that you're just getting through, and you're always just kind of like fine tuning. Like, oh, this went this way, so we know now going forward we're probably not going to do that. Or wow, that was way more work than I anticipated, so I'm probably gonna have to charge more next time going through that.
oh, I've definitely run into that. There's a couple jobs I did, and I'm like, oh my God, I did not even charge enough for this crap.
Oh yeah,
It's like
yeah. Like
next
you go,
time, it's definitely gonna be a lot higher.
especially when you start going through some of that material way faster than you thought you were going to. I
Yeah.
know I was doing a basketball court, and we're painting the middle thing, and I had this texturized paint that's extremely expensive, and I get through my, overestimate a little bit, but then I'm getting through it and I'm only like halfway done and I've already used what I overestimated a little extra 1 gallon can. And I'm like, but I'm only halfway through. And I was like, well,
So,
going
yeah,
forward.
like I always try to, talking about that, I always try to like make sure. Sometimes it's a little hard to calculate how much material you need, but I always try to over calculate it so that way I have too much than not enough. And you know, I typically do that, but I still messed up on so that guy I was telling you that he was kind of mad when he called us because he was like, yeah, there's always a new company. That last job we did for him, we painted 58 bollards, and I got the colors backwards. So I only had 1 gallon of the red DTM and 2 gallons of the
Oh no.
yellow, and I needed it the other way around. Luckily, the red had really good coverage, so it was enough, but I was like, man, I almost screwed that up and was almost gonna have to run down to the store and get some more, but luckily we didn't. So, you can still, even though you have experience doing it, you could still make a little small mistake. Um, and then there was another, and just recently too, one of my last jobs was a shopping center, and um, this was a lesson learned. So I'd usually kind of leave my paint in the back of my truck, and it's been hot and it's been raining here and there. Apparently, whenever I put the lid back on one of them, it didn't properly seal, so moisture had got in there
Oh
in the
no. Yeah.
solvent paint. And it was half a bucket of red. The red's more expensive for us and completely trash. So that bucket I couldn't use for that job. And then I was like, okay, well, I still have a whole nother bucket. Apparently, on that other bucket, moisture had somehow got in there too, because it was one of those ones, even though it hadn't been opened yet, it was one of those ones that has the like a plastic pour spout on it that you pull up to be able to pour it out of, instead of
Yeah.
it being the solid metal can and or metal lid. And I was pissed. And because that was a full bucket of red. That's well, not $200. That's I think it's like 160 or $180 just gone. So we had lost over $200 worth of paint, and we barely barely had enough to actually finish the fire lane there. And it was late at night, so Sherwin-Williams wasn't going to be open. I'm like, man, I'm going to
Nope.
be so mad if I got to make another trip out here when this could have been done tonight. And luckily, we were able to get it done. It was just enough paint, and so that was a lesson learned. Like, if we're not going to be striping back to back, and there's going to be a few days in between, there's going to be weather, just go ahead and put it in storage. Take a few minutes, put it in storage, and take a few minutes to pull it out. And that way, you're not costing yourself paint from being lazy.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was. I was just tired and lazy. I didn't want to mess it. I was like, it'll be fine back there. Well, no, it won't. It won't be. So yeah, still
Yeah.
still
I
making
think we've.
mistakes, man.
Oh yeah. I think I guess like you said earlier, there's never a time where you're not. You're just. It's just new lessons learned. I think, especially when you start growing, it's just new challenges, or sometimes you need a little refresher because you've been so comfortable with how smooth everything's been going and how great you've been doing, and you stop thinking about certain things as much because you've just been smooth sailing for so long, and then something
Yeah.
happens. But
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
it's not too hard to get humbled in
No,
this
no.
industry.
But I know you have a family. How would you say, like, how your experiences with your family and their support of you taking this jump, just going from what you were doing before to then starting your own business? I'm sure, like, what the support or the how it is now might be extremely different than it was in the very beginning. I know that that's the case for me.
Um, I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed with my wife that came into my life, that brought God brought into my life. Because she, even still, she's been very supportive. She always wishes the best and hope that it works out. And my kids are still young. My son's two, my daughter's five, and so my son, he's still too young to understand what's going on. Like, oh, dad's gone. I miss dad, but he's too worried about playing and watching TV. My daughter, she makes it hard sometimes, because and it gets a little frustrating, but yeah, I'll be at home and she'll be doing her own thing and not really hanging out with me. And then when I gotta go to work, she just latches on and like a magnet and just will not let go.
Yep.
I'm like, I gotta go, kid. Like, I gotta get to work. I gotta be here at this time. You're gonna make me late, even though I'm my own boss. I can run late, but I try not to run late with customers. I try not to
Yeah.
waste their time, or make them feel like I'm wasting their time. So, and it kind of makes me feel bad sometimes, because sometimes she'll cry, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I gotta go to work. I gotta do this so I can keep buying you food, and keep the bills paid for the house, and all this stuff. And she's obviously still too young to fully understand it. Um, but my wife for sure, she's been very supportive, and everything that I do, and I couldn't ask for a better wife.
Yeah, I think having that support is it definitely makes the journey, a very different kind of journey going through it because, if you don't feel like you have that support in the beginning, it's very hard. I know a lot of people, even some of our groups, that started a business, but just because they just didn't feel like they had that support behind them, and they got very opposite support where they just didn't have that belief that they were going to do that. They were never able fully to make that jump to starting their own thing, or they started it shortly and then they quickly gave up on it versus and not giving it like a chance to kind of take off. But you mentioned something also like, having, God and faith, in your life. And I think I find it for myself very important. And how would you say like that's guided you through this whole journey of, going to working for somebody to then making a complete jump to a whole different industry that you don't know nothing about, starting your own business, of course, like you said, of knowing nothing at all and just going on a whim and just like we're doing it, we're gonna go into it.
So God and faith, it has, like, I still have stress. We're always going to have stress, no matter who you are, but it has definitely brought me a lot of peace and helped to lower or alleviate some of that stress because, um, up until when we went on that Pavex trip in what was it, 2023 or 2024? It wasn't last year or wasn't this year. So I think it was last
No,
year,
yeah,
2024. Anyway, when we went down there for in Texas for that trip, that it was an experience. It kind of pushed me out of my bubble that I was living in and opened my eyes to make me realize like I need to get right with God because there was a lot of things I was kind of doing wrong in my life at that time. Um, and so and I was extremely stressed out because that's when we had, we were still really new. We weren't getting really any business yet. Still was trying to get established and still trying to get work, and money was getting low because we invested our own money into it. And you know, I didn't have much of it left and bills, kept coming in. So
yeah,
once I fixed that and started going back to church and fixing my relationship with God, it really, really helped not only with my marriage, but also with just the stresses of life in general. Um, Ever since then, ever since that trip, because I kind of had gone to mass, so I'm Catholic. I'm not ashamed of it. But I'm proud to be Catholic, but I hadn't really wasn't really active and wasn't participating in mass and going very often at all. And ever since that trip, that first Sunday when we came back, I went to mass and it was incredible. The message that I received from the homily was, I mean, it it was a shocker, man. It completely just changed everything. And even the following mass after that, because I went the following Sunday, and so from that point on, I only missed one mass, one Sunday mass, and it was because I was down in Mexico with my wife. We were visiting her grandma. So, that's why I didn't go to, to mass on that
yeah,
Sunday. But I've been there ever since. I've started becoming a lot more proactive with the church. We did some striping for the church, and didn't charge them for it. I've recently became a member. It's a club, like a group called Knights of Columbus. They do a lot of
yep,
charity work.
they do.
So I'm a member of Knights of Columbus now, and been just getting a lot more involved with all the different programs and activities that the church offers. And um, it's I've made some new relationships that I think is going to really not only benefit me as a person, but also benefit the business. It's going to possibly generate some more business for us. So um, yeah, man, it's that's also been a huge help just for me as a whole.
Yeah, what would you say that some of the biggest changes from the difference between, not going and, kind of not paying as much attention to that part of your life versus when you started incorporating it very more seriously. But in terms of like even your marriage, like how would you say that transition has been?
Um, you still there? Can you
Yeah,
still
I'm
hear
still
me?
here.
Okay, sorry. Phone call came through and it kind of jacked everything up. Repeat that again.
Yeah, I was saying, so like since the like getting more, before where you weren't as proactive in your faith and versus now where you are very proactive in faith, but how would you even say the transition in your marriage itself of the difference between before then and then now of
Oh,
incorporating that into your livelihoods?
it was a huge change, a big transition, but a good one. So, you know, like I said, I was doing a lot of things wrong in my life. It put my um, marriage on the rocks, and it wasn't anything that my wife was doing. It was all me. It was issues with myself and things that I was doing wrong, and just not being a good husband, not listening, not putting God at the core of everything. And I was drinking a lot to kind of cope with stuff. And um, once I started going to church and fixing that aspect of my life, it just kind of made it flipped it all and on 180. My relationship started getting a lot better. I stopped drinking as much because from what I was reading in the Bible, I was understanding, what the things that we're supposed to do and the things we're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I started cutting back on my drinking, started repenting, like actually being sorry for being who I was and trying to fix it. And once I started trying to fix that and changing how I live my life and having God at the core of it all, it made everything different. It's something that I don't really know. I can't really find the words to explain and express just how massive of a difference it really made in everything that I do from
Yeah.
my day-to-day life. Um, so you know, if you're struggling in life and you don't have God, you don't go to church or anything like that, I recommend look into it. At least look into it. Go to church. Try to, get that part right with your life because it can definitely make a big difference. The amount of stress that I just felt like I had this huge weight started being lifted off of my shoulders. Even
Yeah.
though my actual financial situation didn't change, even though a lot of aspects of my life didn't change instantly and in that moment, it's just, I don't know how to explain it, man. It was, other than, um, like a spiritual awakening. It,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was incredible. It was just a huge weight just being lifted. I don't know how else to explain it.
You just
But
explain the
yeah,
best way you can. I mean,
yeah, it's a miracle.
have you seen a big difference in the business and like the way the business, like the maybe the work or the partnerships and the people you've met of before, when you're like you're saying like before it was just kind of things still getting started and how maybe it might have taken a turn for the better or maybe even the worse.
Not not really in like the amount of business that we get, but more on the business aspect of it. It's just more of um me just not worrying as much.
Mm.
I'm leaving it up to God. I'm still being proactive where I need to be. But I just like I put it all in God's hands, man. And so I believe, I have faith and I believe that it'll it's all going to work out just fine, and I'm not worried about it. And even if for whatever reason, even if the business doesn't work out and we have to sell it off or whatever like that, I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with it because God has a plan for me. He has a plan for everyone, and I accept it. I'm open to it. I'm willing to do whatever it is that He needs me to do. Um, Even if it's, if I feel like I need to sell the business and just dedicate my time to church, then I will do it if he sends me a sign for that. Whatever it is that he needs me to do,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because, um, it's that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give everything up to God. And there's a lot of people that they're not willing to do that. They want to be in control. They want to control their life, and really, we can't control when we live, when we die. We can't
No.
control, we can't take anything with us beyond the grave. So I think that's a really important thing to consider when making decisions, in general, not just necessarily for your business, but for yourself and for your
Life.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there's just so many like businesses and life lessons that kind of just very much intertwine into each other.
yeah.
Like mental health and working on that and how important that is. And if you're not stressed by running a business, you'd be stressed for working for somebody else, or like or other things that come up. You're just gonna be stressed. So like having that foundation to either handle the stress or in a very proactive and healthy way instead of just shoveling it away or doing other things that are gonna they're not the most healthy for you, versus of like, find the healthy ways to like work through it or even get to the point where some things just don't bother you anymore. Period. Like it's just like that used to bother me and it used to stress me out, but now like it can happen and I don't feel nothing towards it. It's like, okay.
So now that you say that, it did trigger something. So finding like being more active with the church, getting back right, getting right back with God and everything. That's one area where for sure it has helped me and helped to make a huge difference. So the times that I'm like on a job and I'm getting frustrated, I still get mad because something didn't work out and a mistake was made. Now I got to spend more time fixing it and making it right. And so I still get pretty mad, but um that has helped me a ton with actually handling the situation. So um, I used to get pretty angry and like it would cause my stress levels to go through the roof. And now I'd stop, I'd take a deep breath, and I thank God for this day, and I thank God for the opportunity to learn from the situation. So it's really helped on that aspect. Like helped me to be like, okay, just stop, breathe for a second, appreciate this moment, appreciate it for what it is, appreciate that you're alive today. Things could be worse, you could be dead.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's reevaluate. And so it's helped out a lot with that, and it's helped out a lot with just my patience with people in general. I'm not a very big people person, and I'm getting better. I used to really hate people. I didn't really want to deal with them, and yeah, that's a really good feature to have working with clients, right? But it's really helped me to be better about that and to actually be more patient and more flexible with people to be able to give them what they need.
Yeah. I definitely think it's not necessarily like you become perfect where you don't respond all the time to things. It's just more of a you get this new awareness of like you can now
Yeah.
spot it when you're responding a certain way. Because sometimes I,
Yep.
I still have that default mode of responding to certain things. But sometimes I can catch it almost immediately, or like I'll catch it a little while afterwards, and I'm going back and apologizing that maybe, hey, I shouldn't have responded that way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And but even how big of a difference even something like that makes. but like having that established faith or grounding, right? Of like what the faith at least gives me, and it sounds like with you, it's like is that grounding experience to then to like increase the level of awareness, or to like I said, where certain things just don't bother you anymore, or when things do bother you, you now have a ability to handle them in a better way, or to reset. So you can now move forward and make the best decision in the moment versus doing something that could be destructive to the situation, and now more of moving forward and build into the situation.
Yeah, for sure.
But Bill, it's been a pleasure. I can't believe we've already went an hour into the conversation.
I know it's
Um,
crazy. It went by so fast.
yeah, yeah. I was curious, with these first few episodes of how they're gonna kind of go. So still kind of playing it out. And like I said, doing it scared kind of thing is my motto. Again, getting into that season. Um, but if someone wanted to like reach out to you, what would be like the best places for someone to reach out to you?
So you can Google, Google the business H&H Striping.
Where are you out
We
of?
also Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So yeah, so H&H Striping out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have a YouTube page. I actually have two YouTube pages. So one is Striping with Bill. I'm trying to be a little more active with that. Talking about some of my experiences in the striping with either what happened on the job site or with customers. I have a video on there that I got cussed out by somebody because, and that can be a whole nother topic, right? But that somebody's using our Google business phone number to try to make scam
Oh,
calls to
yep.
people, and
Yep.
the blowing them up, and so he was pretty mad and called us left a voicemail cussing us out. But anyway. Um, so Striping with Bill is one channel. The other one is H&H Striping or Striping Services or something. I can't quite remember. I'm not really too active on that one. Facebook, you can search H&H Striping on Facebook. So yeah, we got quite a few ways. Or you can also go to our website. It's www.h dash or hyphen h hyphen striping.com.
Awesome. Now, if you were to go back, you said you've been in business for what, 2, 3 years?
Yeah.
So if you go back knowing what you know now to your other self who's wanting to make that jump into starting their own, business or parking lot striping business, what would you say to yourself who's contemplating
Um,
it?
so there's a lot of things that I would have probably done differently. I would tell myself for sure, do research on SEO work, and get ready to do a lot of it because it's something that doesn't happen overnight. So start doing that right off the bat. Also, don't, for me personally, don't buy the Titan 850. Uh, Get at least a Graco 3400 or similar machine, something that's going to give you at least a quality result. Buy the best equipment you can afford while still leaving a cushion to keep the bills paid while you're trying to work on getting your business up and running. And if you have to keep, if you're working a job, which I was doing the casino thing at that time, so I would have told myself, keep doing the casino while you're waiting for work to come in, so keep money coming in. So if you're working a job right now, keep that job until you get enough money built up that you don't need it anymore. Don't just quit your job and go all in. Some guys they have success doing that, but from what I know, it typically tends to be the guys that don't have a lot of competition in their area. Um, so, but everybody does typically get lucky, and it's very successful right off the bat. But most of the people are not. A lot of guys start it and they go out of business.
Yep.
It's like if you can give 100 people, 100 different people the same advice to make them millionaires, and only five of them will actually be successful with it. So um, but yeah, I mean that's just some of the things I would tell myself to do for sure is buy the best equipment you can afford, keep keep a chunk of money for the bills while you're waiting on that business to come in, and look into SEO. Do a lot of research and start doing SEO work.
Well, I totally agree with you there, Bill. Well, thanks again for joining. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the
Yeah.
Line of Work
Thanks for having
podcast.
me.
I hope this has been a good experience. See you next time.
Yep. All right. See you next time.